Welcome to the Jurist Law Podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into an all-new episode of the Jurist Law Podcast with Kimbro Stevens and Shane Cox. I'm your host, Mike Leon. Kimbro serves as the managing attorney, and Shane is the chief legal counsel over at Jurist Law Group. With rich backgrounds in healthcare and elder law, they've been helping families navigate the complexities of long-term care, asset protection, and estate planning. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to choose the person who will carry out your wishes, your executor, your trustee, and the power of attorney. These decisions can make or break even the best written plan. So how do you choose wisely and keep the peace in the family? We're going to get into that in just a second. Gents, it's good to see you as always. Shane, I'll start with you in this episode. What exactly do we mean by the term fiduciary, and what makes these roles that I just mentioned before so important in an estate plan?
Yeah, thanks for having us, Mike, again. So fiduciary is a term, and kind of, you could think of it like the term agent. I guess the fiduciary is more of a legal term because implicit in that, it just means kind of that you have duties. You're acting on behalf of somebody. So when you pick an agent, they are going to be acting as your fiduciary. So as an example, if you had a power of attorney and you listed an agent, that person, whoever you list, or if it's a corporation business, someone is going to be acting as your agent and a fiduciary for you, which means in your best interest on your behalf.
Kimbro, let me ask you, a lot of people oftentimes, I have two kids, so they default to just naming their oldest child, or even sometimes a close friend, in these roles and responsibilities. What should families really be thinking about when they're deciding who's really best suited for each of these roles?
Yes, you're right. A lot of times the oldest child has always been the one that's kind of been, sort of managing the siblings. Everyone looks up to the oldest child. Many times I've had someone come in and it's the youngest child because for some reason or another, they seem to be more responsible. So the issues that we really deal with is who do you think could handle the stress of administering? Who gets along with everybody? If you have a child that's not very good with their interpersonal skills with the others, that would need to be taken in consideration. But the one thing that I always tell my clients is if you don't trust your child, don't appoint them. So you have to decide which one of your children is most trustworthy. Not that anyone is not trustworthy, but it really is a trusted relationship. That's the definition of a fiduciary is that they have to do what's in the best interest of the estate or the person or whatever, and who can you trust to make that decision when the time comes. So, I just usually put it that way.
So, it funnels onto the piggyback here, Shane, which is how much legal or maybe even financial knowledge does a good fiduciary actually need? Like, is it better to pick somebody that's trustworthy with the numbers who can, and is a professional in this, or is it somebody with no experience? Like, what would you recommend?
That's actually a really good question. I think it's going to come down to the capability of the person to kind of, as you mentioned, relate to attorneys or someone that can assist. Certainly people can act as a power of attorney without ever calling an attorney, but it goes down to, it's going to come down to their ability to act in your best relationship, but also, and this is maybe the pertinent part of the question, they have a good head on their shoulders. So I'm not suggesting that you have to be college educated or any kind of professional to act as an agent. There's tons of power of attorneys that are not that way at all. But you got to be able to understand that you're acting on behalf of someone else, and you got to be able to communicate with, like for a financial power of attorney, for example, you're going to have to be able to communicate with institutions like banks and things like that. So you have to have some aptitude to, to be able to understand some of those financial terms and different things like that. If you're a healthcare power of attorney, you're going to have to be able to have some conversational skills and be able to understand some of the dynamics of the, of the loved one that you're actually representing for their healthcare. So, which means talking to doctors and things like that. So I think what I answered your question is listing a bunch of factors to kind of get to the point to say you need somebody that's got a good head on their shoulders that's going to act in your best interest.
Kimbro, we mentioned the roles at a high level here. In a previous episode, we broke down a little bit of them, but I want to break down a little bit further. Like, let's say an executor's job. How is it different from a trustee's job? How do these both differ for somebody who holds a power of attorney, like we talked about, while they're still living? Like, can you kind of explain and break down some of these roles and responsibilities?
Sure. The one thing about the power of attorney, it ends upon a person's death. An executor's role doesn't begin until a person's death. So those two kind of butt up to one another. You have the power of attorney up to the point of death, and then you have the executor after that. And a lot of times we like those people to be the same, so you don't have a lot of disjointedness right here when that transition occurs. The thing about a trustee is you can have a trustee all the way through, even prior to death and on after. You don't have this sort of separation between the two. And that's the reason why trusts are very important, because they continue the continuity of what was done while the person was alive as well as after they're deceased. And you're not having to change guards anywhere along the way. And so, from that standpoint, a trustee's role is before, during, and after a person's death. Power of attorney is while they're alive, and executor is when they pass. And even though the roles might be similar as far as what you're doing for that person, it's not as disjointed in a trust, and also it's private. So the trustee stands in a fiduciary role to, they have a duty of loyalty to the beneficiaries. They can't be impartial between them. And their job is to do what's in the best interest of those folks in context of the written agreement, which is the instructions for the trustee. And that's kind of a long answer.
Yeah. Shane, let me ask you, because we've been talking about the conversations that people should be having, who they should be picking. But what kind of conversations, for someone who listen to this right now, should they be having with the person that they're going to name responsible? Is it important to give, some heads up, or no heads up because you don't want to create that type of tension within the family?
Well, that's another good question, I'd say. I think it really depends on the scenario, but to answer it promptly, I would say you need, if you're going to have someone appoint an agent for you, and this is going to happen, and by the way, power of attorneys can be done different ways. You can have a power of attorney that actually activates once the person becomes incapacitated, but if you just do, and that's called springing power of attorney, but if you do it, just a normal, durable power of attorney that gives a person power now, which means if I did one for Kimbro, he could go to Fayetteville right now for me and open a bank account in my name, right? Just as an example. Well, he needs to know that. He needs to have a copy of that instrument and kind of understand what I'm expected of him. Now, if you did the power of attorney for a reason, like as a form of estate planning, like if you're an older person, you think, what, I'm going to have to make some changes. This also needs to be conveyed to your agent.
Kimbro, let me ask you, we were talking about kids earlier, and that people normally tend to pick the oldest one. How do you guys usually advise clients that want to, let's say, have more than one child involved, maybe a co-trusteeship, co-executorship? How do you handle that in terms of advising them on that? Is that a good idea ever?
Well, yes, it is a good idea sometimes, not always. So again, it depends on the dynamics of the family. Some children tend to be instigators or disruptors. A lot of times they'll say, well, we're not going to give them a big voice in this because it will create chaos and controversy. On the other hand, a lot of parents like to be inclusive, and they don't want someone to feel bad because they pick somebody else. So a lot of times we will have co-trustees, and there's all kinds of ways. You can have multiple trustees, and they can make decisions by majority vote. You can make them have unanimous vote, or they can have independence. You can be co-trustees with independent authority. I tend to err on the side of independent authority, so they don't have to have a committee meeting. A lot of times it's out of convenience of the parties. If one of them lives out of town or out of state, it gets all gummed up, and it's complicated, and you can't do anything. What if you have to go to the bank by yourself and the co-trustee can't come? It can be a problem. And one particular problem that I don't like is I had a trust one time and they had 4 kids and they said that they had to unanimously agree to everything. Well, they're still in trust administration after 3 years because they can't agree. So I don't think that's a wise formula to put all your kids in a bucket and make them agree. We know that they didn't agree during their lifetime. Why are they going to agree after you're gone? So I discourage people from doing that to their children, because if you can't agree, they just get in a log jam. And if you ever want to get anything solved, then you got to go to court. And this private arrangement that you made now becomes public again.
Shane, for somebody that's listening right now, maybe they realizing as you guys are talking that they've chosen the wrong person years ago for the responsibilities here. Is it difficult to update those documents or make that change to be somebody else?
No, it is definitely not difficult to change the document. And you would typically do that by creating a new power of attorney, which clearly states, like usually in the opening paragraphs, that it revokes any previous power of attorneys. Now, the reason why I sound hesitant as I answer that question is, practically speaking, it can be a little difficult. Meaning, like, if you did give a power of attorney to an agent who's not actually making, the best decisions on your behalf, and they're going around to different companies and giving copies of power of attorney, if you think easily like someone taking advantage of you. You're going to have to track down, you're going to need to track down where all that power of attorney has been given, or at least where that person is still trying to do business in your name so that they can get a copy of the new power of attorney showing that you revoked theirs.
And just to add on to that, as far as, changing trustees, we typically allow the parents to always change trustees. They have the power of appointment, meaning they can change trustees at any time for whatever reason, with or without cause. And so we always try to be flexible with appointments so that they can be made, particularly if someone passes away who was appointed and things like that.
Yeah. Gents, as we wrap here on this episode, and Kimbro, I'll give you the first word here on this last question. What's a piece of advice you would want to leave people with as they're listening to this about choosing the fiduciaries in their lives?
Well, like I said, maybe in a previous episode, who do you trust? And it really gets down to a point of who do you trust that can withstand the stress and make the best decisions. We all make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. We're not asking someone to have the perfect child. We just want them to try to pick the one child that can bring the family together the best. Usually, in my opinion, it's been the middle child. So sometimes middle childs can be the best trustees. And I just encourage them to find someone that can help bring the family together the best. That's usually the one I encourage them to choose, along with maybe another child as a co-trustee with some either joint or independent authority. And then that way it esteems the whole family that way.
Yeah. Shane, anything you want to add there?
That's mainly it. I think, if all else fails, just to add to what you were saying, if you really don't know, you can also have banks and there's different organizations that can act as a trustee. So if a person has one in mind, but they think I better have a successor or a backup, you can list you can put things in your document where you could have you don't have to, but you can have a company step in for you.
Yeah, and I would just like to piggyback on that real quick. Before we finish up here, we do offer trustee services here. I'm a trustee in certain situations when there is really no viable option to the family. And so we do provide trust administrative services as well as trustee services to clients who may need that, including executor services as well. So we can provide some of those fiduciary services for clients that don't have viable options. Yes, we do that here at the Jurist Law Group.
It's great to know. Gents, thanks as always for the time, the insights on all of this. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah. And thank you to everyone out there for listening to this installment of the Jurist Law Podcast with Kimbro Stevens and Shane Cox. For more information on them or you want to connect with their team, visit juristlawgroup.com today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review and comment, or share the episode with someone who needs to hear it. As always, I'm Mike Leon. See everybody next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.